but she was a lot younger than I was. So I really, I thought that was crazy, but a lot of people pass away from cancer. So, and I don't recall my stepmother telling me what kind of cancer she had. I do know it was cancer, but I don't recall her telling me what kind of cancer she had. But when she told me that, I really felt it, and then I was like, I really felt for her uh, daughters and son, and and to this day they're probably still living uh, in Tennessee, you know. But and then her friend that I painted the school bus for, I think I met her like once or twice, and this is just when she was bringing paint over or something like that, because she had to keep bringing bags of paint and stuff like that to paint that bus. But anyways, I just really felt bad for her kids, her mom, and her mom was a real nice lady. Her name's Betty, and it's just that was just a tragic thing to happen, and just being with her and stuff like that, it was just you could see that she just had a lot of she was real happy. She had a lot of joy in her and stuff like that. And I don't know, but all this really fell apart after me and her finally called it quits and stuff like that. And and then over time, this happened, and then she passed away. But I was like, sometimes you think, well, what? Wonder if you would have just stayed together, would something have happened that she wouldn't have passed away. You know what I mean? But you just never know. I mean, you can't predict the future. You can't predict what's going to happen, and stuff like that. But she was a real good person because, like I said, I helped take care of her kids and just treated them like they were mine. And at the time, I had my oldest son with me, and he was a young man. And then me and his mom was talking on the phone, and she was like, she had my daughter, and she was saying, hey, could you bring him to me, and then I can let you keep your daughter, basically just swapping out children because me and her was not together, but we was still on talking terms and stuff like that. So that's what happened at that point where I had actually the time that I took my dad to the Greyhound bus station, and me and my street brother, my young brother, we took him to the bus station, and I had my son with me. So he was going back to his hometown, which that's where his mother was at, and she wanted to, swap kids. So I told her, I said, hey, I'm going to put him on a bus with his grandpa, and you can pick him up there. And she knew, because she's ran around with my sister and stuff like that. So she knew, where to pick him up at and stuff like that. And I said, the following weekend, I'll be there. And but my dad, he just wanted to leave a week prior to that because him and his old lady was having problems and stuff, which was my stepmother. And so anyways, I took them to the bus station. A week later rolls around. I drive to my grandmother's house, which is my dad's mother. And I drive there and I spend the weekend. Me and Rose, we spent the weekend in town. We went out to my mom's house. She lived out in Possum Creek, Tennessee. And we had a good time for the weekend and stuff. And then I went back home and I took my daughter back with me. So that was some things that actually took place. And then finally I had another trip. I had took my daughter back to her mom. And then at this time, her mom had all the kids and I had none. I just was with Rose and her kids. And then after that, we had separated and I went to Detroit and stuff like that. Then she ends up coming back to Detroit and going to Westland where her mom, Betty, lived, and her it wasn't her real dad, it was her stepdad. His name, it was Betty and Dick. That was his name. And when she told me the name, I kind of laughed. And, I said, who would have a name like that? But I guess people do have names like that. But anyways, but he had another name too. And she told me, but I forgot what it was. But anyways, they were real good people because I remember when she had came and then she wanted to ask, was there an apartment she could rent? And then we told her, yeah, there's one upstairs. So she came down for the weekend, looked at it, asked me, could we get back together? And I was like, yeah, we could do that. And so anyways, I ended up going out to Westland and getting her stuff out of storage. And that's when I met her mom and her stepdad. But her real dad, he lives in, I want to say Arlen. And he had another family with kids and stuff like that. And she said sometimes he would come and visit her. I never met him, but he has came and visited her and stuff like that. But he moved to Arlen for some reason. I don't know what it was, but he ended up having a family over there and stuff like that. So she actually has siblings in Arlen. I don't know if her kids know this, but maybe their grandmother told them about it or whatever, so maybe they do know. But anyways, Betty and them, they were good people, nice people, stuff like that. And so I moved her into the apartment. Me and her hook up again. And we're together for a period of time. And then she ends up wanting to move back down south. And I told her at that particular time, I told her I wasn't ready to go. And then she said, well, I'm still going to go. And I was like, all right. And then she was like, if you ever want to come, just call me, And then so basically that point right there is where we called it quits at. I could have went back, a month later, 2 weeks later, or whatever, and met her back in the South. And I could have, we could have been back together, drop of a hat. But the thing was, at that point, I was just enjoying Detroit because I had a lot of friends in Detroit and stuff like that. So that's what happened between me and her where we had finally called it quits. But I hope her kids are doing well. And as far as I know, her mom's still alive, and her, her aunt and stuff like that. But it was just an adventure, doing. I just really enjoy going to that park where they film Ernest Goes to Camp at. We just really had a good time, and that's when I had met her aunt and stuff like that. And then, like I said in my previous videos, I went to her aunt's house. We ate dinner over there before, and stuff like that. And and then I remember her husband. He was out working on a car, and I had went out there and talked to him, and stuff like that. But I didn't know him. It was like the first time I had, encountered him and stuff like that. But I talked to him. He's a friendly guy, stuff like that. But anyways, that was that, and then so I ended up staying in Detroit. So I ended up moving back downstairs with my stepmother, and then stayed there for a while. And I remember, we had a lot of parties back then, and we had a party one time, and my stepmother, she had hooked up with hooked up with one of my friends. And but it was, it was just like they hooked up that night, and then he went home the next day. But the thing is, they had hooked up, and that was odd because we had a lot of people there. I had, Chief was over there, Mike David was there, Sherry Soulsby was there. We had a, but we always had get-togethers like that on a weekend and stuff like that. And but they hooked up, just for one night, and that was odd. But there's another whole story behind that situation, and I'll get into it later. But and one thing I think about today is, back in the day, a lot of people hung out on their porch and stuff like that, drinking beer. Everybody, most people had beers in their hand, a cigarette in another hand, and stuff like that. And nowadays, some people do still hang out on their porch, and but it ain't like it used to be. But the thing is, what's weird about it now, when you see people hanging out on their porch now, I mean, they might have a beer with them. It's not in their hand, though. And what's in everybody's hand now when they're on the front porch or when they're anywhere, basically. And this is the almighty cell phone. People, that's just people's lifeline, where people just stay on the phone, whether it be texting somebody or doing selfies or, or watching YouTube or whatever it is, just the cell phone has, really got people, I guess you could kind of say addicted to the phone because, a lot of people just stay on the phone a lot, some too much, and, stuff like that. But it's just weird that I see people hanging out on their porch now, and everybody's got a cell phone in their hand. But, back in the day, you'd see people on the porch and they'd have a beer in one hand, a cigarette in another hand, And so that's a trip, to see. But, as time changes, people change. And, nothing ever stays the same, you know. Things just, things change with time, you know. So, and I remember one time a friend of mine wanted to go up north and from the south, and he wanted to go up just to, he ain't never been up north. So I took him up north, and something happened. We was all on the porch and, you know, having to get together or something. Something happened to a lady that was down the street, maybe, I don't know, half a block away or whatever, but you could see. But we didn't see what happened. We just seen her on the ground. And so we don't know really what happened. If she fell or got hit by a car, what happened. But it was just down the road, and somebody had noticed it. And then, you know, and the dude I had brought from the south, he was like, wonder why nobody's helping, you know, nobody, because at that time, you know, people see something like that, they'll call an ambulance maybe, or, you know, something like that. But most of the time in Detroit at that particular time, people wouldn't engage to go get themselves involved in something like that because, and this is what the guy that we brought from the South, he didn't understand, but we explained it to him, and then he got it. But I had told him that, you know, in the North, things don't happen like they do in the South. You know, sometimes in the South, you can be on the side of the road, somebody will pull over and try to help you or something. You know what I mean? Just more friendlier environment in the South than it is in Detroit City. Not saying people won't help people in Detroit, but I'm saying at this particular time, people would call for help, but they wouldn't get engaged and involved in it. And the reason being, because say you went over there to try to help, and say their family pulls up or sees or walks down the street and sees the person on the street and then sees you by her, you know, the first thing they're going to think that you did something to their family member. So then it ends up being, you know, and this didn't happen, but I'm saying this will happen if you don't approach the situation the right way. And then they think, you know, they may think you did something to their, you know, family member or whatever. So then it ends up being, you know, snowball into something else that you, all you was trying to do was just trying to help. So in them days, that's the reason for that, you know, that people, you know, they would call for help, but they just wouldn't engage in trying to help because other things can pop off from that. And that's what I explained to him. And then he understood it, but he said, I didn't look at it that way, but he understood, you know. I said, you just got to know that what environment you're in, what hood you're in, and what your surroundings are. Because it's not nothing like the South, you know, where a lot of people are just friendly, you know. And I remember when I first came to the South, I mean, I came to the South a lot as a kid, you know, with my parents coming to visit, my grandparents and stuff like that on summer vacations and stuff like that. But I remember when I first came here and I was driving, and I couldn't believe the things that I encountered and the things that I saw. Like, I would actually, you know, ride past a police officer, he'd wave at you. Ride past people, they would wave at you when they were riding past you. And it was just strange to me because I never experienced that before, you know. And then another thing I experienced is when I first came to the South, up north, they won't leave stuff out on the sidewalk and all that kind of stuff up north because people will actually take it, you know, in them days. I'm not talking about today. In them days, people would take it if you left it out on the sidewalk. And so when I had came to the South, and the stores and hardware stores and stuff like that, they would have a lot of merchandise out on the sidewalk and stuff, and leave it out all night long, you know. And that just blew my mind because where I come from, they do not do that, you know. And at the time, they would not do that in Detroit, Michigan. And that was something that blew my mind. And then also street lights. You know, in Detroit City, the whole city's lit up. So at night, you can see where you're going, whether you're walking, driving, or whatever, you know. It's just got street lights everywhere. But when I came to the South, that was another thing that blew my mind, that I noticed I couldn't really see at night driving because I wasn't used to it. You know, it was just pitch black. The only thing you had was your headlights. And God forbid you had one headlight, or, you know what I mean, and one headlight out or something. But that really blew my mind too, because at this time, not only, you know, the little town might have had a couple street lights, you know, nothing major like it was lit up, you know. And but at this time, my mother's living out in Possum Creek. So this is like, there's a little town, and then it's like way out in the woods. And they call it, in the South, they call it out in the ridges, you know. And then back there, all down them back roads, it is pitch black. You cannot see nothing. But you got headlights, but that's it. And you just, man, I'll tell you, it was like, to me, it was like a blind person driving a car because I could not see. I couldn't hardly see. I had to get used to it. And I guess my eyes had to just get adjusted to it. Because, you know, when you're from a big city and you're used to everything lit up, and then you go to the South where on the back streets, there's no light except for your headlights. And just think, if your headlights was to quit working, you would basically just have to stop and wait to daylight because, you know what I mean? Because you couldn't see nothing. It was just pitch black. You could hold your hand in front of your face and you couldn't see your hand. You know what I mean? That's how dark it was. And so that was, you know, that was an encounter I had that I just really, just certain things in the South just really threw me for a flip, if you will. You know what I mean? And I just thought it was something else that, you know, and basically in the South and in the big cities, it's basically night and day, you know. You know, and not saying you ain't got no friendly people in Detroit. I ain't gonna say it like that, but I'm just saying, if a Detroiter's listening to this video, you would have to go to the South to see what I'm talking about. And if you're from the South, which you may be, or your family might be, then you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't been to the South, take you a trip to the South in the country, and then you can see, exactly what I'm talking about. But that being said, it was just a whole new environment, you know, for me. And the people actually do things totally different in the South than what they do in the North. And it just amazes me the different ways of people and stuff like that, and the atmosphere and everything like that. But that being said, I'm going to stop this video from here, and hope y'all enjoyed it. And I just want you to know it don't cost you any money to subscribe, so let's go ahead and subscribe. Let's get the likes up and hit the notification bell and support the channel. And if you want to support the channel with funding, my cash out is $ FC313, and my PayPal is DDT313. And I appreciate everybody that's listening. I hope my story, inspires people, and, whether it make you laugh, make you sad, or, just bring back memories of your own, stuff like that. I hope you appreciate me telling my story, because this channel is about my story and all the things I've done, I've seen, encountered, and I heard, And I just like to keep it 100 on this channel. And I hope everybody appreciates listening. And, hope you have a good one, and be watching out. And remember, subscribe, hit the like, and the notification bell. And be watching out for the next one. Many stories to come. I appreciate you. Hang tight.